All right, so we will start the legislative meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance by Ms. Mulhern.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Ms. Mulhern. Ms. Harding will do the roll call.
Mr. Burdell Williams.
Present. Sorry about that. Present.
That's okay. Mr. Cohen.
Present.
Mr. Epps.
Present.
Mr. Fishbein.
Present.
Ms. Haywood.
Present.
Ms. Henry.
Present.
Ms. Lohman.
Present.
Ms. Mulhern.
Present.
And Mr. Schultz.
Present.
Thank you. That concludes the roll call.
Thank you, Ms. Harding.
You're welcome.
We have our student representatives report. I see that both Sadie Leary and Dylan Nelson are present. And so which one will provide the report for tonight?
Hello, everyone. I will be presenting the agenda for tonight.
Thank you, Dylan.
And of course, if I miss anything, Sadie will add on. So here's our, I have the agenda in front of me right now. And from our Civics and Community Engagement Committee in Council, the committee is right now organizing a town hall meeting, which will involve student bodies, includes like clubs and other extracurricular activities, as well as the staff involved in those clubs and student body. And we hope to have even more people and groups speak than we did at last year's town hall meeting. For environmental justice, our Environmental and Sustainability Committee is still working hard to implement environmental justice in the townhouse curriculum. And some good news, on January 26th of this year, the Environmental Committee held a very successful thrifting event in combination with the WISE organization, which is our Women in Science and Engineering Club. All leftover clothes were donated to charity. And this wasn't on the agenda, but Sadie let me know earlier today for this update for our charity committee. We are planning to have like more fundraisers involved this year because of the last 2 school years, we weren't really having those kinds of events. And we hope to give more to charity and get more involved in those kinds of events as a school and as a community. So we're working to implement those into our community. And I believe it's the last thing for me for now, but this is also not an agenda. But I recently got in touch with another student named Emily Joseph. I've interviewed her earlier this month, and she will be joining me as another scoreboard liaison for the rest of the school year and hopefully next year as we both continue into our senior years. So there's a good chance that both me and her will be going back and forth in terms of participating in these school board meetings. So you'll mostly you'll still be seeing me, but there's a good chance that you'll also be seeing Emily, or maybe you'll see both of us, or we'll both alternate between roles. I did catch her up with the position, and she basically knows what to do during these meetings, so that's good. But now I have someone else to work with me. So once Emily joins, I hope that she'll be a great addition. I hope you welcome her on the team with us. And from what I've heard of her and from what I got from the interview, she seems like a very good person to work with. So here's how she does well, and I would like to welcome her to the council and to the overall team. And that's it for me. And Sadie, if you want to add anything real quick or want to add on something I said, feel free to.
Yeah, just one thing. It's not super important to the agenda, but we are doing the individual class councils. So like class of 23, I know is they're doing a lot more fundraisers as well too. So tomorrow there's a fundraiser for the class of 23 at Trios Elkins Park because I know the seniors are selling chocolates, things like that, because we've lost so much fundraising time for the end of year activities, but I think that they're catching up. So I just thought that I would add that.
Is that that's the end of your report?
Yes, it is. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Ms. Leary and Ms. Nelson for that. For the president's report, Dr. Scriven's goals have been for the 2021-2022 school year have been approved by the school board. I want to thank the board members who worked on that committee to help create and edit and finalize those goals, which is Ms. Lohman, Mr. Fishbein, and Mr. Schultz. Thank you very much. The goals are attached to the agenda, and they will also be posted on the district's website for community members who want to view those. Additionally, last month was the school director's observation. And it was an observation or celebration that Governor Wolf put in place to acknowledge the work that is done by school board members. In addition to that celebration, the Cheltenham School Board of Directors also committed to the principles of governance and leadership from the Pennsylvania School Board Association. Those principles include for us to advocate earnestly, lead responsibly, govern effectively, plan thoughtfully, evaluate continuously, communicate clearly, and to act ethically. All 9 board members signed that commitment, and that document will also be posted on our website. And that concludes my report.
Thank
Dr.
you, Madam
Scriven,
Chair. Yes,
Thank
ma'am.
you.
Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you now. Yes, you are
All
up
right.
for the superintendent's report.
Okay. Good evening, Madam Chair. Thank you, Vice Chair, and to our Board of Directors. Today, I have the honor of presenting the Superintendent's Report for February 8th. I want to begin with just really giving my deepest appreciation to the community members, residents, board members that popped on during the superintendent meet and greets with the respective levels. So we had K4, we had a meet and greet for Elkins Park, Cedarbrook, and Cheltenham. And from those meet and greets, I've learned that we have a very committed and engaged community. Several of the individuals that took part in those meet and greets are willing to serve as we move forward as being stakeholders on the strategic plan committee. So I was extremely excited and appreciative that there was such an overwhelming willingness for those that actually showed out. So thank you to the Cheltenham School District community. Next slide. As you know, we are in February, which is Black History Month. And under the leadership of our communications director, we will be doing a series of Did You Know social media events that will be displayed through social media each and every day. I believe this was our first of many. And one of the things that we're really trying to do is highlight our Cheltenham alum. This was a Cheltenham alumni from 1993 that is currently a sitting principal in Philadelphia and is doing extremely well in that endeavor. Was just received an award in 2021. Cheltenham High School, they have a very active Black Student Union. And for them, this week is a Spirit Week at the high school. And as you can see, is some of the high level activities Monday through Friday that they will be participating in. Next slide, please. This is something that really resonates with a lot of our board members when we just talk about our social and emotional well-being, and not really just for students, but for faculty, staff, and the community at large. Mrs. Keene had an opportunity to participate in this outreach activity, which is titled, as you can read, Navigating the Middle Mental Health System. But there were various healthcare providers, vendors that were a part of this speaker series where individuals, including community members, have the opportunity to receive pertinent information with really navigating mental health, especially as we continue to also navigate the pandemic. The Aldersgate was one of those sponsored programs that were part of the mental health series that I just mentioned, but they are taking it a step further with us in partnership, and they're going to be providing additional services, therapeutic support for our K through 4 families outside of the school system. So I just always want to elevate the work that we are doing to make sure that we're really keeping the social, emotional well-being of our students and our families at large in the forefront of what we're doing. It's hard to move the academic needle or the achievement needle if there's other barriers that are in the way. So these are some of our efforts to remove those barriers. Next slide, please. This initiative is something that we actually have moved forward with. I do want to give acknowledgement to Dr. Smith and Dr. Gallagher and their team. This was something that we were getting some feedback on. It's my understanding from the community for a couple years now around a life skills program not being prevalent or present at Elkins Park Elementary and was actually at Cedarbrook. We have now transitioned that program to Elkins Park, and it addresses a series of concerns that folks had. Now we have a program which is in the school, which is grade specific to those scholars who are now actually participating in it. So I do want to once again thank all of the team, the administrative teams from both schools and support staff for really seeing this through. This is something which is definitely in the best interest of our scholars. So thank you to our Office of Special Education. Next slide, please. This was exciting for me, and I'm telling or informing, I think is a more appropriate word, the board, that really as I move through this spring, I'm really looking at getting into as many schools as possible to be an active participant in a lot of the great activities that are going on. This was an activity that was held last week up at Cheltenham High School. Believe it or not, it was our 9th grade students that have just matriculated to the high school in our project-based learning. And I don't want to try to call out every teacher, but I do want to just acknowledge all those teachers that work on this team. The provisioning that was done for the students was outstanding. The final products that students actually presented and developed were top notch. We had individuals, different commissioners. We had architects. There was a panel that was established that actually critiqued each one of the project led teams and gave them immediate, authentic feedback. The young people were charged with looking at some of the spaces within the school district, which you see listed, let's say Lamont Community Center, and they had to reinvent potentially how else could that facility be used or how could it be enhanced. And just again, I was thoroughly impressed. Next slide, please. As you are aware, or you may not have been, so that's why we're bringing it to the forefront. This is our Counselors Week. It's run, as you see, February 7th through the 11th. The slides or the animation that you see are just our counselors at our respective schools. I just personally want to give them a shout out for all that they do. Just like so many teachers, administrators, our counselors wear multiple hats. And I just thank them for the support. I actually look forward to meeting. I've met a couple counselors, but by no means have I met the majority. So I'm looking at also meeting them. I'll be stopping by counselor offices as I do my next round of school visits because I want to meet and hear more about their work and then how we can support their work. Next slide, please. This is a high school senior at Cheltenham who has been nominated as one of the top 5 entries in the Philadelphia region 2022 Scholastics Art and Writing for one of her poems. I'll see if I can organize having her actually maybe come to a meeting and recite that poem. I think that would be pretty cool to hear from her personally, but definitely wanted to acknowledge and congratulate that accomplishment. And this excites me when you see the energy just in the picture of some of our Myers scholars who are involved in the first robotics Lego League. I remember this from our old district. And this is elementary. So we have the complete continuum, elementary through high, where they will be involved in robotics, where you talk about STEM. Robotics is just powerful. And the first robotics program and the competitions I'm very familiar with, this is something that I definitely want to see firsthand. So another celebration. Next slide. And as we continue with our good news, again, that authentic real life opportunities for students to demonstrate mastery of their knowledge, I think is critical. This is a shout out to our Cedarbrook and their 7th grade class who were actually charged with using Pixit to create comics grounded in Spanish. I think making education fun is powerful. And I just look forward to doing a deeper dive and seeing those great programmatic things that are going on. And then this last individual, one of our younger scholars, is the winner of the Wincote Spelling Bee. So a shout out to Oliver, and looking forward to his continued success as he will move on to the regional spelling bee. Next slide, I believe that may be it. And it is. So I thank you to the board. Always just want to give you guys a flavor of what's happening in the district. And really it's about showcasing our scholars and what they're doing. And we try to capture that in the full continuum K through 12. So thank you for your time, and Madam Chair, I will turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Scriven. Next, we have Mr. Diazio for sunshine announcements.
Yes, thank you. There are no Sunshine Act announcements for this evening. The board has not had any executive sessions since the last board meeting. However, I do want to point out that there is one action item that I'd ask the board to consider, and that is on the consent agenda. There is an item that is proposed to be added to the agenda. It's titled Approval of Salary Adjustments, and this was an item that needed to be added to the agenda today. And since we were within 24 hours of the start of the meeting, we'll need the board to vote to officially add that item to the consent agenda. I will note that the attachment for the salary adjustments was posted to the agenda. It was simply that the heading was missing from the consent agenda language. So if the board is comfortable adding that item to the agenda, we would need a motion to add the item to the consent agenda, and then a second, and then a vote on that item, at which point the item would be added to the agenda.
Okay, can I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
I second that motion. Julie Haywood.
Thank you. So we'll do a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. And that motion will carry.
Okay, so with that, the approval of salary adjustment items is now properly listed on the agenda, in the consent agenda, for the board's consideration when it gets there this evening. And that's all I have as part of the solicitor's report this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome. All right, so next we have public comment on agenda items only. If there are any members of the community that wish to make comments or questions on the agenda items, you can use the raised hand function in the Zoom interface, and you'll be given speaker privileges. For those who are watching otherwise, you can submit your questions to CSD board meeting comments@cheltenham.org as listed on the agenda. And I am looking in the participant pod. I don't see any raised hands. Are there any emails that are coming across?
Nothing has come across yet, Ms. Henry.
Okay. Well, we can get that just one more minute, and then we will move on. That almost feels like a moment of silence, doesn't it? We will move on to the next item, and if there are any questions that come across, we will address those. Next up is the approval of minutes from the January 11th meeting. And I get a motion to approve those minutes?
So moved, Miss Lemon.
Second?
Second, Leah Mulhern.
And all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Say nay. I'm an aye. The motion carries. We have our committee reports. We will start with financial affairs. Mr. Schultz, I believe you're giving that report.
Yes, thank you. I move my notes to the correct screen. The Financial Affairs Committee meeting was held on the evening of Tuesday, February 1st via Zoom. Following roll call and approval of minutes, the agenda topics for the meeting were first a presentation related to potential debt refunding, which is that topic is reflected in a board action this evening and could yield several $1 million worth of long-term savings to the district in the form of lower interest rates on some of our debt. The next item was a review of the year-to-date revenues and expenditures, which is a typical agenda item. The next was an update regarding the 2021 audit, which is complete pending a final draft. The next item was an update regarding the MCIU budget, which is also reflected as a board action this evening and will result in slightly increased expenditures at the Montgomery County Intermediate Unit, which is an entity that supports the school district on several items, including transportation and special education, among others. The fifth agenda item was an update on the current budget process. So the budget for next year, which is the 2022-2023 budget process. This update also included some information regarding metrics around staffing and other comparative benchmarks with neighboring districts as we continue through the budget process. The last item on the agenda was information related to the district's recently released food services request for proposals, and included some information around most of that is very prescriptive and very prescribed based on what we must include. It also included a couple of pieces of information around things like sustainability efforts and other places where we could define additional parameters as a district. Members of the community can view a full recording of the meeting by visiting cheltenham.org/presentations, and you can get much more information than what this summary included. Finally, separate from the meeting, the board also received an informational presentation from the auditors regarding that aforementioned audit. And there will be a more detailed public discussion of the audit's findings during the March Financial Affairs Committee meeting. The next Financial Affairs Committee meeting will be held on March 1st, following the Facilities Committee meeting. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Schultz. Ms. Haywood is providing the Educational Affairs update tonight.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Henry. The Educational Affairs Committee met on January 18th at 7 p.m. via Zoom. After roll call and approval of the December 21st, 2021 minutes, the one agenda item was an update on the district's health and safety plan presented by Ms. Jessica Keene, the Director of Student Services. These updates were based on the most current federal, state, and local guidance and included revisions to the test to stay protocols, mask to stay, contact tracing, revisions to assurance testing protocols, household contacts, and as well, she provided an updated COVID exclusion guide regarding when to isolate, quarantine with noted exceptions. Given the many changes that have been made with respect to school isolation and quarantine, the protocols are now on our COVID-19 a link on the district website and include an exclusions guide fact sheet. As part of the presentation, Ms. Bronson with Effective School Solutions provided an update on additional social and emotional resources available to our K through 12 students, as many have been struggling with these kinds of issues during COVID-19. She shared the additional supports, including clinical supported EP, Second Step K through 6, Aldersgate resources that Dr. Scriven shared for our high school Cedar Brook and EP students. And she also provided information about professional development workshops and mental health support for our staff and parent workshops convened by communities that care. We learned that the district is able to use ESSER funds for expenditures related to preventing, preparing, and responding to COVID-19. I invite you as well to review the presentation on cheltenham.org presentations. And the next meeting of the Educational Affairs Committee meeting will be February the 15th at 7 p.m. via Zoom. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Ms. Haywood. Mr. Burdell Williams is providing a report from the Eastern Center for Arts and Technology.
Yep. Thank you, Mrs. Henry. The Eastern Center for Arts and Technology Joint Operating Committee met last virtually on Wednesday, January 13th, 2022. We did not discuss any items that require board approval, but there were a few key topics that I will share with the community today. First and foremost, Mr. Mario D'Alessio, an Abington Senior High senior, was honored as the January 2022 Student of the Month for his outstanding work in Eastern's electrical technology program. Just very quickly about Mario, he comes from a family who understands and respects career and technical education, as his father is also a graduate of the electrical technology program at Eastern. It is also important to note that Mario was selected last summer for a paid internship to assist with electrical upgrades at Eastern, and was able to work 32 hours each week over the summer, gaining a lot of hands-on industry experience. Second, Eastern, actually this was an event that happened in December, but Eastern held the nationally recognized Skills USA Leadership Organization's local competitions. In all, there were 23 trade competitions and 14 leadership competitions that Eastern students competed in. There were 50 first place winners, including winning teams who also attended the district level competitions, which were held in January. The results of those district level competitions were released last week. And I do just want to add, although it was not discussed at the meeting, I do want to just share some appreciation that Cheltenham had a significant number of winners in those competitions. One being Mr. Daniel Hayes from the networking and cybersecurity program, who won a first place gold in the extemporaneous speaking competition. And, you know, again, to just one person to highlight from our group, there were 4 total individuals from Cheltenham who received, who competed and also medaled in their respective fields. There'll be more to come on that at our upcoming meeting. The third key topic, the Pennsylvania Department of Education awarded a competitive equipment grant to Eastern for the amount of $50,000 to be used to fund the purchase of a tabletop mechatronics learning system, portable electric motor control learning system, and a UR training hardware package to help and assist with the certification for students participating in the Robotics and Automated Technology program. And fourth, Eastern's Collision Repair Technology program was also awarded a grant. This grant award for $4,000 was through the Greater Philadelphia I-CAR Committee to be used for tools, equipment, and supplies necessary to enhance collision repair technologies. A full brief that covers the fine details of the JOC meeting can be found on Eastern's website at eastern.org/JOC/JOC-meetings. The next meeting of the Eastern Center for Arts and Technology Joint Operating Committee is tomorrow, February 9th at 8 p.m. to be held virtually. And the link to that meeting can be found on Eastern's website at eastern.org. And that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Burdell Williams. Mr. Cohen will provide a liaison group report.
Thank you. Let me just get to the right page, please. The liaison group met on January 18th, and the agenda included discussion overview of the Stormwater Enterprise Fund and stormwater fee. And for note, the school district is exempt from that fee. There had been some discussion about that as the fee was being developed. There was next a school district COVID update. Also, that was followed by Roland and Lamont Community Center updates. Of note is that the libraries are planned to be reopened in the spring in those 2 buildings. There was next a discussion about the business privilege tax program. And there was a note from the township manager, Mr. Zinkowski, that there is a proposal being developed for that program and it will be sent to the school district. And it was noted that the business privilege tax program had never been an official program, even though it is currently in place, and they're looking to write that program. That was followed by a discussion about LORTA, which is Local Economic Revitalization Tax Assistance follow-up. And that's a program that allows properties to be redeveloped with foregoing taxes on the value of the improvements for those properties in certain parts of the township. And this township will be scheduling a follow-up meeting with the school district, in part to refresh the school district and also to inform the new board members since that first LORTA meeting. There was then a question about this township's rating in state rankings for the school district, and that was answered by Dr. Scriven. That was followed by a discussion about land development updates in the township, and that means real estate developments. It was noted that a pilot, a payment in lieu of tax program, was implemented which will include the school district, and that was for a proposed group house on Edgemore Road. And that's of note because those properties, in case such as group houses, are exempt from real estate taxes. And in the past, the township had implemented a number of pilots, payment in lieu of tax programs, that had always exempted the school district. So I was glad to hear the school district was included in that one pilot, and hopefully will be included in pilots going forward, which means that the school district will get a voluntary donation by the owner of that property, as if they would still have to pay taxes, even though the property will now be tax exempt. And that will benefit the school district and also other taxpayers in the township. There was then a reminder made about the importance of having working smoke detectors in houses. And there's a program where they are available for free through the fire marshal's office. And the school district did, subsequent to the liaison meeting, put the information out to the school district community. That was followed by information about a public comment period that ended January 31st for the proposed elimination of our magisterial court district after Judge McHugh retires. What that means briefly is that there's a process the county's working on to redistrict the magisterial courts, the local courts, and they're proposing to remove the seat after Judge McHugh retires and combine that with Jenkintown, I believe. And that comment period is now closed. So that's now being considered by the county. Under announcements, the meet and greets with Dr. Scriven, which he addressed earlier tonight, were discussed. The next liaison meeting is scheduled for February 22nd at 8 a.m. and that will be held virtually via Zoom. That completes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Cohen. One of my fellow board members pointed out that I missed not one, but two committee reports. As you can see, I have decided to put my glasses on and stop being in denial about the fact that I actually now need them even when I'm on the computer.
And I just want to say, I thought there was a case, but I just rolled with it. So thank you.
So let's go back to D. Ms. Lohman is providing a report on the Montgomery County Intermediate Unit.
Thank you, Ms. Henry. The Montgomery County Intermediate Unit Board met on January 26, 2022. The board appointed and welcomed 8 new board members, including myself. The other substantial part of the board meeting was devoted to presentation of audit results from the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2021. The report yielded excellent results with no significant findings. In addition, Dr. Regina Speaker, who's the executive director of the MCIU, provided an update of the MCIU organizational goals for the 2021-2022 year, which now include metrics. The MCIU board approved the 2022-2023 membership services budget. The board also approved the 2021-2022 Section 611 and 611 ARP, American Recovery Plan budgets for training, consulting, and equitable participation responsibilities, which relates to the IU's responsibilities to provide services to private schools within its geographical region. The MCIU board reviewed the agenda and reports from the January 11th Head Start Policy Council meeting. And then there were some human resources updates, including updates that the IU had just hired 25 new employees and accepted 14 resignations. Additionally, the MCIU board granted approval of a number of general contracted consultant agreements to support the following patent or PATAN initiatives, including state personnel development grants, middle school success, the path to graduation, and the Pennsylvania Department of Education annual conference. The MCIU board approved continuations and renewals of contracted technology services agreements to support school districts for the current school year. And the board approved a number of contracted service agreements to support the IU's many trainings, programs, and services. The next MCIU board meeting will be on Wednesday, February 23rd via Zoom at 6:45 p.m. I also just wanted to point out and give a plug for a program that the IU is offering in conjunction with both some statewide and local parent groups that advocate for children with disabilities. The first presentation is actually tomorrow night from 6 to 8 via Zoom. It's called Universal Design for Learning with Shelley Moore. Our district has been advertising it. Our SEEK group is one of the groups that's been involved with helping to plan it and bring that speaker to the area. So they're very excited. The IU is very excited to help host that speaker and those presentations. This ends my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lohman. Mr. Cullen will be providing the facilities update.
Okay, thank you. And let me get to that report. The Facilities Committee met by Zoom on February 2nd. Following roll call and the approval of the January 4th minutes, the agenda items were: number 1, Cheltenham High School. That included flooding on the 2nd floor, library piping, stadium scoreboard update, and sewer line obstruction. And just want to note about the 2nd floor flooding that the maintenance staff did a great job in terms of addressing that issue in a very timely and thorough manner. The second item was Cedarbrook Middle School, about library window tinting, which was being done in terms of trying to reduce sun in the room that was making the room somewhat challenging in terms of too much sunlight and glare in the room. The third item was Elkins Park School, about lighting retrofit proposal. And briefly, this would be a proposal to retrofit the lighting to use energy efficient lighting that would be done at no cost to the school district through a program run by PICO, and would also, besides energy efficiency, would also meaningfully reduce energy costs for the school district. The next item was Woodcut Elementary, about the glycol cooling tower update, and that project appears to be moving forward after it's been moving forward and stopping for a period of time, and that's to address cooling and HVAC in the building and to fix what had been a situation where glycol had been leaking. Next was a district-wide athletics field update in terms of a new program to help maintain the fields and make them more usable. Next was an update on School Dude Solutions, and that again is a system that helps the district monitor maintenance and requests for facilities in the school district. And the next Facilities Committee meeting is scheduled for March 1st at 7 p.m. by Zoom, and that completes my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cullen. Ms. Haywood is providing the Policy Committee update.
Thank you. The Policy Committee met on January 26th at 5 p.m. via Zoom. And after roll call and approval of the December 22nd, 2021 minutes, we discussed the policies listed on the consent agenda under the Policy Committee report. This evening, there are 4 policies that are being presented for adoption, and there are 2 policies proposed for repeal because the content of these policies has been consolidated into other policies. This evening, the 4 policies presented for adoption and discussed under old business of the Policy Committee agenda include Policy in AR 315, bloodborne pathogens, Policy 323, use of tobacco and electronic smoking procedures. This policy sets forth guidelines for the use of tobacco and electronic smoking devices during school hours and on school property by school employees. Policy in AR 916, volunteers, which recognizes the important role that volunteers play within our schools and sets forth the district's guidelines for engaging community volunteers. Policy 621, local taxpayer bill of rights. Again, this policy recognizes the district's responsibility to comply with the requirements of the Tax Reform Act of 1998 and provides a taxpayer bill of rights that will be forthcoming in the next policy committee meeting as part of a developed administrative regulation. The following policies listed on the consent agenda are presented for repeal, and that's the policy 314.1, 414.1, and 514.1, titled Management of HIV. Again, the contents of this policy are now incorporated into policy in AR 315, renamed bloodborne pathogens. Policies 423 and 523, use of tobacco and electronic smoking products. Again, the contents of these policies are now contained in policy 323 with the same title. Other topics discussed during the new business portion of the meeting are 4 first read policies, including policy 006, meetings, which governs the operation of board meetings, policy 903, public participation in board meetings, policy in AR 922, civility, policy in AR 823, energy management and sustainability. I just wanted to note that this policy included a goal of adopting a sustainability plan by June 30th, 2022. And in order to provide sufficient time to engage students, staff, and the community to adopt the sustainability plan in the midst of other priorities of the school district, we've moved this policy in AR to the April meeting for the remainder of the 21-22 school year. Excuse me, and we recommended that there be further discussion of adopting the plan in an upcoming facilities committee meeting. And then policy 604, tax waiver request, is considered a new first read due to some material changes that were made to that policy to align the process with the timing of tax waiver request as determined by the county and township. That'll come back again to the policy next month as a new first read policy. All first read policies will be discussed at the next policy committee meeting on Wednesday, February the 16th at 8 a.m. via Zoom. Just wanted to note for the record that at our last legislative meeting, we announced that the policy committee meetings would start at 5 p.m. Due to some scheduling conflicts, we'll retain the 8 a.m. start time for the policy committee meetings from now until the end of the school year. We will revisit that start time for the fall with the hopes that we can decide on a start time that would allow for more community participation. That concludes my report, but I'd like to take a motion for approval of the policies that have been noted on the consent agenda for approval, and those policies that have been noted for repeal.
So moved, Zachary Epps.
Is there a second?
Second, Ms. Henry.
Second is Ms. Henry. Any board comments? Mr. Schultz.
I have a process question. I know we recently started doing policy approvals as part of the consent agenda. Is that I just wanted to confirm that these do not appear later on in the meeting.
Those items, my understanding is they are listed on the consent agenda. So
you don't have to do this now.
You actually don't. You would not need a motion and a vote now. You would do that as part of consent. Thank you, Mr. Schultz.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Schultz, for that clarification. Okay, I'll withdraw those two motions.
Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes my report.
Okay, Mr. Epps, the legislative report.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good evening, fellow directors, administrators, members of the community. I'm Zachary Epps. This is my first report and meeting as a representative of the Montgomery County School Board Legislative Committee. We met on January 19th, 2022. And I will share, I wasn't the only one. We had quite a few members who were joining, who were newly elected and joining for the first time. We'll convene each month to discuss both proposed and adopted legislation related to public education. And during each legislative board meeting, I will share both federal and state legislative updates. And so before I begin, I'd be remiss if during Black History Month, I didn't acknowledge Hiram Rhodes Revel, one of the first people who identify as Black to be elected as a US Senator in the United States of America. And that happened just 5 years after the Civil War. And so I lift him up and acknowledge the contributions that he made to our country. Starting at the federal level, federal lawmakers are expected to seek another continuing resolution, which is a short-term budget agreement that maintains necessary funding as both chambers will negotiate a long-term budget framework. The current resolution does expire on February 18th, which is not far from now. And so, as mentioned, lawmakers are expected to seek another short-term deal within the next week. As a follow-up to previous legislative committee reports, in response to shortages in available bus drivers around the nation, states can now waive a portion of the CDL, commercial driver's license requirement, in efforts to streamline an applicant's process and in hopes relieving the shortages that are seen here and in Pennsylvania and around the country. At the state level, really hot off the press, earlier today, the governor delivered his 8th and final budget address, which included a total of $8.6 billion for basic education funding. This represents about a 22% increase from the previous year, or $1.5 billion increase. Of that, $1.2 billion would be distributed through the fair funding formula, with another portion of the funds distributed through the Level Up formula. In terms of special education funding, the governor's proposing a $200 million increase to special education funding, which represents about a 16% increase from the previous year till now, which would bring the total to about $1.4 billion. So what does that mean for Cheltenham? The Pennsylvania Department of Education has released or has updated what that means for counties throughout the Commonwealth. And so here in Cheltenham, that represents an almost 30% increase in basic education funding for our township, which represents a little over $7 million in basic education funding. Special education funding, that is another area where there's a proposed increase. For our township, it would represent about a 16% increase, or in terms of the total number, about $3 million dedicated to special education funding. Some other important things to note in the proposal is increases in early childhood education funding of about $60 million. Community-based mental health services at account for county mental health-based funds. As we heard a little earlier about career and technical education, the governor is also proposing an increase in career and technical education funds to a total of a little over $100 million across the Commonwealth. There will be another proposal in an efforts to attract and retain teachers, another proposal to establish a minimum salary of $45,000 as a starting salary for teachers in the Commonwealth. I just went through a lot of numbers. As I mentioned, you can find those on Pennsylvania Department of Education's website or through the governor's website. Another important, before I talk about next steps, another important part of the proposal is savings through charter school law reform. Charter law reform is estimated to save taxpayers throughout the Commonwealth a little over $300 million per year. Policy changes such as a flat rate for special education tuition at about $9,800, a flat rate across the Commonwealth would save our township about $700,000 per year. And so as proposed, actual legislative and regulation changes as it relates to charter and cyber charter schools would have a financial impact, a positive financial impact on many places throughout the Commonwealth. I've said proposal a number of times. The governor's budget address is just that. And so on March 7th, the House Appropriations Committee will consider the governor's proposal, and the Senate will do the same on March 10th. In that, from now and through then, this body has in previous years passed resolutions supporting the governor's proposal, and we can certainly consider doing so again this year. We do have, Cheltenham has a representative on the Pennsylvania Senate Appropriations Committee. That's State Senator Art Haywood. And so if members of the public and others, as you learn more about the proposal, again, just happened today, hot off the press, as you learn more, please do reach out to, we have a very important representative. He's right on the Appropriations Committee in the Senate, and is available to hear from you and your advocacy. At the same time, our state representative, Napoleon Nelson, is also engaged in these conversations and is a member of the Education Committee in the State House. And those two representatives are really going to carry our voices forward in this budget process. Just a couple more, two more updates I wanted to share related to charter school tuition. As another follow-up to previous reports, there is proposed legislation. The governor proposed the change, right? And now the legislator around charter reform, the legislator has taken up that proposal. Representative Joe Soresi, who represents Montgomery County, the Pottsgrove, Pottstown area, introduced a bill that would establish that flat rate for special education tuition throughout the Commonwealth. And so as a point of note, just about 14 cyber charter schools throughout the Commonwealth collect over $500 million in tax money. And so setting a flat rate and being able to use the same formula tiers for special education, again, would have a positive impact, somewhere again around $700,000 savings for Cheltenham per year. And so that is pending legislation right now at the state level. And that matters for us because we recently heard in our Financial Affairs Committee meeting the rising cost of charter and cyber charter schools right here in our township, the significant increases. And so again, we have, as a board, we have an opportunity, members of the public, you have an opportunity, no matter how you think or feel about these issues. I did list the names of the state representatives and their contact information can be found very easily. I do encourage those to advocate as you see the need. In conclusion, also happening right now and happening right now and over the next couple of weeks is the fair funding lawsuit in Pennsylvania. As has been reported here and many other places throughout the last few years and months. The trial is expected to last through the end of this month, where really the question is, does the Commonwealth right now thoroughly and efficiently fund the system of education throughout the Commonwealth? And so on one side of the case, there are 6 districts and families arguing that the state does not thoroughly and efficiently fund the system of education. And arguing on the other side is the legislative leaders of the Pennsylvania House and Senate. And so, as I mentioned, there are daily summaries of what's happening in the court case. You can find that information through organizations like Children's First PA or Education Voters PA or Fair Funding PA. There's a lot more information if you would seek it. That will conclude my legislative committee report for this evening. I'll hand it back to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Epps, for that report. Next, we have approval of agenda items on the consent agenda. And I have a motion to approve those items that are on the consent agenda.
So move, Mr. Cohen.
Can I get a second?
Second, Leah Mulhern.
Before we call a vote, I'd like to go to the school board for questions or comments on any items. Seeing no hands raised, we will take this by voice vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. Seeing none, I am aye, and the motion carries. Next, we have the approval of the MCIU number 23 general operating budget. Can I get a motion for that?
Move to approve, Julie Haywood.
Second, Jenny Lohman.
Thank you. We will also open the floor up to comments or questions about that. Seeing none, we will also do this by voice vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. I am an aye, and motion carries. The next approval is the approval of parameters for refunding of the 2014, 16, 17, and 18 bonds. Can I get a motion to approve?
So moved, Dan Schultz.
Second, Charles Bordeaux Williams.
And I'd like to open up the floor for comments and questions. Mr. Lindeman?
Yes. This resolution would be to enable the school district to refund and refinance those parts of those series of bonds as described. We talked about it a little bit, well, a lot at the Finance Committee. The parameters resolution is essentially a resolution which establishes parameters that gives the financial advisors and the school district the ability to enter into the bond sale when all the parameters are met. We have on the and as we stated and shared last week in the meeting, and Mr. Schultz did describe in the Finance Committee report, we're looking at saving, hopefully in excess of $6 million over the next 20 years, which is substantial. It's a little over $300,000 a year in your debt by refinancing at these favorable rates. On the line tonight, if there are any detailed questions, we have Dan O'Brien and Brian Bradley with RBC Ben Kappenstein with PFM. Those three are our financial advisors. And George McNada is our bond counsel who kind of makes sure everything. He's actually the crafter of the parameters resolution for us. So any questions I would divert to them or continue on unless one of them want to say something, which
Chuck, this is Ben Kappenstein, PFM. Good to see everybody. I'll just add in, I think Chuck covered most of it, but these are refinancings that are just looking for interest rate savings. So we're not borrowing any new money. We're not extending any maturities. It's simply taking higher rates, replacing them with lower rates, what we call a high to low refunding or refinancing. Just a little bit on the market. It's been pretty volatile lately. You've probably heard about inflation and how that's kind of gotten pretty crazy here in the last couple months. The Federal Reserve is expected to increase rates multiple times this year, which is one of the reasons that I think it's good that the district is looking at these now, try to get in and lock in some of these savings before some of those rate hikes take place. So happy to answer any other questions that people might have, but overall, I think Chuck covered it pretty well.
Thank you, Mr. Linderman and Mr. Kappenstein. Mr. Schultz, I see your hand raised.
I just wanted to say thank you as one of the co-chairs of the Financial Affairs Committee for all of the work on this, and the savings are potentially very significant. I won't say more because time is of the essence, as alluded to in those volatile markets. So thank you again.
On that point, we're going to move as fast as possible to try to get to market, and we're expecting sometime in early March to be able to do so.
Thank you. That's great. So we're going to take this by voice vote. I'm going to call you how I see you on the screen.
Ms. Henry, has there been a motion and a second?
There
on this
was.
one yet? Was there? Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So I did that, and then I did the comments.
Understood. Thank you.
You're welcome. Mr. Schultz?
Aye.
Mr. Fishbein?
Aye.
Ms. Lohman?
Aye.
Ms. Mulhern?
Aye.
Ms. Haywood?
Aye.
Mr. Epps?
Aye.
Mr. Cohen?
Aye.
Mr. Burdell Williams?
Aye.
And Ms. Henry, I am an aye. The motion carries.
thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome. We have public comments on non-agenda items. If any members of the public would like to speak, you can use the raise hand option within the Zoom function if you are present on Zoom. If you are watching either streaming or otherwise, you can send your questions or comments to CSD board meeting comments at cheltenham.org. We do have one member of the community right now that has her hand raised, and please give us your when you're unmuted, your name and where you reside in the community, in the township.
Hi, Elisa Davidson from Windcote. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Ms. Davidson.
All right, thanks. I'd like to give the board, Dr. Scriven, Dr. Smith, and Ms. Keene some made up but realistic scenarios, each followed by a question or two. I'm hoping you'll imagine our high school community in these scenarios, and I'll email them to you all after tonight's meeting. A teacher has concerns that a student is self-harming. Who is providing crisis intervention and ongoing support to the child and family? A student shows a staff member a social media threat that says there will be a fight after school. Who is providing the mediation? Who is managing conflict resolution and developing intervention strategies that will help students prevent this and future altercations and avoid punitive measures like expulsion and criminal charges? A student with a diagnosis of major depressive disorder has just moved to the district after a 2-year placement in a residential treatment program. Who is assisting this child adjust to her home, school, and community? A guidance counselor sees a sharp decline in a student's academic performance. The student shares that his parents have separated and suffered income loss. The student is afraid of eviction and has been working at night to help his family. Who is alleviating family stress so the child can function more effectively in school? Who is assisting the parents in accessing and utilizing school and community resources? A new teacher to the high school is eager to help her students, but feels overwhelmed at times by students acting out in her class. Another teacher who has worked for many years believes her students are having a hard time during the pandemic, and she does not like the amount of time they spend on their phones. Who is providing these teachers with direct support? Who is assisting them with behavior management? Who is able to provide information that helps staff better understand the factors that affect a student's performance and behavior? Following a meeting with a family of a struggling student, a guidance counselor provided a grandmother with a list of mental health resources, substance abuse assistance, a food pantry, a grandparents raising grandchildren support group, and a low-cost family health center. Who is providing case management and helping this grandmother obtain these services? Who is ensuring our school district families receive adequate support from these community agencies? The principal and vice principals have knowledge of 6 students who have lost primary caregivers over the past year. Who is providing bereavement support? Who is trained in evidence and trauma-informed individual and group therapy? And finally, as our school staff works to diligently follow Pennsylvania's multi-tiered system of support, MTSS framework, comply with IEP and 504 service agreements, manage threat assessment teams, and really all areas of student support services, who are the members on these crucial interdisciplinary teams? My hope is that you can all answer these questions. And if we rely on our outsourced limited day staff that are not CSD employees, I hope you'll take a moment and wonder, is this best practice? Is this best for our school? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Davidson. Next, we have a response to prior public questions. I don't believe there were any. Correct? And our future meetings are as listed with a couple of updates. The policy committee meeting is scheduled for Wednesday, February 16th. It's listed on the agenda as the 13th, but is actually Wednesday, February 16th, and the time is 8 a.m. And I think that's the only update that we have to those future meetings, which will be listed on our district website also and updated. And that concludes our legislative meeting. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So
Move to
moved.
adjourn.
Joel Fishbein.
Second, Julie Haywood.
So the meeting is adjourned. Good night, everyone.